So for the mechanisms on question 4, I'm not going to go step by step, but what I do really want to point out is I want to point out really the key steps and the key intermediates in these reactions. So for part A, what you should be able to do is you should be able to look at this molecule reacting with acid, and that should look pretty familiar to you, and hopefully, so we'll skip to the answer. Hopefully what you'll see is that the first step is going to be this carbon-carbon pi bond acting as a nucleophile to get the hydrogen ion, and then subsequently leaving a very stable benzylic tertiary carbocation. So this at this point becomes a very good electrophile. And then the next step is this acting, is that one more equivalent of this carbon-carbon pi bond again. So here this thing is acting as a nucleophile. So here this is acting as a nucleophile. And it's going and attacking that really good electrophile. And then once we get to this point, then what you need to do is look at the molecule that is the product of this. So I think that this step and this step should be pretty straightforward. But then you get to this step, and this is where this becomes maybe a little bit complicated, but I really don't think that it's that complicated. Because again, all it is a carbon-carbon pi bond that's attacking this carbon center. And you may say, well, wait a second, you're breaking aromaticity here. But you're not making a molecule that will end up breaking aromaticity, because once you draw this acting as a nucleophile, forming this bond, and this will then just very spontaneously re-eliminate back to give the product molecule. For this, I think what's important, so for part B, what's important to realize is that these are ketals, right? So the very first reaction that we talked about in this class was acetal formation. And then we talked about ketal formation. When we talked about it in the context of making these. Right? So you look at these conditions. What you should first look at this and see is that hopefully you look at this and says, okay, that's just going to go to the dialdehyde. You need to look at those reaction conditions and say, okay, this makes sense that this sorry, it's not a ketal, it's an acetal, will go right back to the dialdehyde. And then all you have is a very simple aldol condensation. Right? I'm not going to go through all the details of these. Part C and Part D, I think, are relatively, those are relatively straightforward, I think, in terms of aldol addition type reactions. And those are in the answer key for the problems. Those are discussed in great detail.